reviews, topic discussions, and much more. Today is a topic discussion. The discussion is, do you prefer one-man bands or collaborative efforts? So my name's Dennis.
I'm Hadi.
And my name's Jack.
Right, and let's jump into this discussion. So I thought this up because right off the bat, I'm just going to say I'm not a fan of one-man bands. So by one-man bands, I mean like Ben Folds, Tame Impala. Apologies, Tame Impala.
What, the album you put in your best of 2020 list? Just to clarify, Tame Impala.
Yes, I am a hypocrite. You called me out. But
that list has caused more controversy than anything else we've discussed
because of the rule breaking, throughout. But yeah, so
you prefer a collaborative effort.
I prefer a collaborative effort as opposed to like where you have multiple. Like I think one of the best examples I can think of off the top of my head is Dream Theater, where you have so many just highly skilled musicians, and it almost feels as though they all chip in to some extent to create the final sound. And I prefer that because sometimes when it's just one voice, it sounds a little monotone. I don't know. What do you think, Hadi?
Yeah, it's hard for me to say, I think, whether I prefer one or another. I mean, kind of in preparation, I did put together a small list of bands that I would say would fit into both categories. So, for instance, kind of going through like some of the most popular bands of all time that are considered collaborative. I've got the Beatles, Fleetwood Mac, Queen, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, and Metallica. So all kind of bands that have multiple songwriters and or multiple singers. When I look at bands that are more focused around a single creative, I've got LCD Sound System, Tame Impala, like you mentioned, Prince, David Bowie, Sufjan Stevens, and Nine Inch Nails. So just taking a look through those two lists, I mean, there's definitely kind of a sense that kind of the one-man band approach is potentially something that's more modern. I mean, I know I've bookmarked kind of Prince and David Bowie that you could say are more kind of longer lasting, but I think it's more common for these days for kind of musicians to kind of have more of like an individual control, at least in terms of like the rock space of music. So I think it depends on the situation. I mean, I guess the potential is when you have a collaboration that there's going to be a variety in songwriting more than when it's an individual. Like you might have a lot of different songs or different sounding songs with a collaborative band. But when it is an individual, there's maybe going to be more of a uniform stylistic approach. But I think that does get offset by the fact that if you're going to have one lead creative, chances are they're going to be supremely talented, playing multiple instruments, being, having a wide range of like musical and theoretical knowledge. So I think that can often offset the challenge of them maybe being pigeonholed versus collaboration bands where you only need to be good at one instrument technically. You know what I mean?
You mean like a Damon Albarn who seems to be like a multi-instrumentalist?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so perfect example for Gorillaz. So he's gonna be able to kind of play so many different things and record, produce, etc. So that kind of the demand of his skill set is going to be a lot higher versus say, for example, if you're just like a lead guitarist and you write songs, but your main focus is just playing guitar.
I think it's interesting you brought up Fleetwood Mac as one of your collaborative bands there, because and I was going to cut on the last point. Lindsey Buckingham is a massive instrumentalist who plays loads of stuff, but in the early days, Peter Green was like the man of Fleetwood Mac, and it was very much like his band, and he did everything for that whole sound, and then it's kind of progressed into what it is today, where it's got more of a collaborative feel and more of a kind of
Yeah, that's a good point. I mainly just went off a list of like biggest selling bands, at least to get that, and I found a lot of the like biggest selling, rock bands of all time were these type of bands that kind of, you'd consider as like, uh, there were multiple major contributors. But it's a very good point. Yeah, I guess that the kind of the popular Fleetwood Mac era is the one with Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham, etc. But there is the old school sound where the music was completely different right at the same time. They transitioned from like a blues band into like a kind of pop rock band.
The pop rock one has got like catchier songs, but definitely the bluesier Peter Green Fleetwood Mac is the best Fleetwood Mac. As a personal preference before we go on with it.
Yeah, I guess kind of take another thing that you could ask is, you could say, is do bands that have these kind of these collaboration type bands, do they end up kind of selling more or being more popular, have more commercial success? Because like I said, just looking at the best selling list, it seemed like the ones that were right in front, at least in terms of bands, playing within like a rock genre, were the kind of collaboration focused ones. Obviously you've got like singer songwriters and pop artists, but that's a completely separate category that I wouldn't consider part of this discussion, So
would you also think, because like there are people like Iggy Pop in like rock, and like kind of Stevie Ray Vaughan and like stuff like that, where like they'll have had help from the people around them, obviously, but they're like the kind of focal point of the thing. And even to some degrees, like obviously he worked with incredibly talented musicians, but Jimi Hendrix, it is the Jimi Hendrix experience.
I was just thinking of that.
And he had he had a fantastic drummer and a fantastic bassist who could play organ and saxophone and other stuff as well. But it was him that
wouldn't be the band without him. Yeah. I guess it's always, when you put it like that, it has kind of always existed on the sideline. I guess potentially it's just comparing it to, say, bands on the level of like, say, the Beatles or Queen, for instance. I can't think of like an artist in the rock space that's achieved that level of success. It's kind of almost like a second tier thing. And I wonder if that's been influenced by the kind of individual nature.
Well, you mentioned it's more of a modern thing for one-man bands. Do you think
it seems like there's more of them. Not that it's necessarily something that's started in a more modern age. It's just, I don't know, it seems more popular.
Do you think that technology has enabled that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think it is important. Yeah, I guess the kind of prototypical classic band, they need a producer, they need an engineer, they need a whole team around them to get the finished product. And now you just need a laptop. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, and even like on the basic level of like the guy behind Dennis, if you want a drummer and a banjo and a harmonica and whatever, you'd have to get all of them and learn all of them. Or now you can learn a keyboard and use plugins to kind of emulate the stuff you can't actually play, so you don't have to buy 5 different instruments. You could buy a plugin set and have a go at them anyway.
It's a very good point. Technology has kind of allowed that style of songwriting to develop or be more accessible.
I think I watched a Linus Tech Tips video where they went to Deadmau5's house. And Deadmau5 has this custom...
His studio is insane.
Yeah, he's got this wall, which is just literally just all the effects.
A dream.
And he can basically do anything. And the coolest thing that I saw was he's got those old school like operator phono sockets, as they were properly used by an operator. You dial 0 and then the operator would connect you, and that's how he would connect the effects together, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, going back to how I guess technology is enabling that sort of thing. So I don't know, Jack, where do you see things like going forward? Because what I think is like a common theme that I've noticed is there's a lot of like sort of what Gorillaz did sort of for Song Machine Season 1, where you'll just get these collaborations in. You'll find the hottest thing and you'll get these collaborations in. do you see that sort of becoming more common, especially like when you talk about like social media and sort of Instagram culture, where memes and memes are becoming more of a thing. You look at like big things that have happened in the last couple of years, things like the Logan Paul KSI fight, where you've got these two guys with these huge followings, and then they come together to create this storm of hype. So yeah, where do you see sort of things going forward?
Well, I think the biggest difference between the like one man projects and the kind of collaborative thing is the space or the scope for kind of virtuosity. Because if you're the only person, if you're the driving force of the music, you can have as much scope as you need to really like show off and do stuff like that. But an interesting case that I get to bring up about once or twice a month, luckily now, is Jason Becker. Was a incredibly talented guitarist. It's not MS. ALS, yeah. So can't play anymore, but still composes thanks to software that him and his dad kind of worked on together. He obviously still has the mind of a virtuoso and composes incredible guitar pieces, but needs to collaborate to get his pieces recorded. So has to find these kind of prolific guitarists to come and play the pieces he's done. He did an album in 2018, which is incredible, called Triumphant Hearts, and like it's got Uli John Roth, it's got Marty Friedman, it's got Gary Rosenberg, it's got Guthrie Govan, Joe Satriani, Bonamassa, Steve Vai. It's got name them, and they're on this album.
The goats.
Yeah. So I think that's got to be the way that it goes, especially now that it's so easy to connect with people, and it's so easy to like. Because this is what my other go-to Jacob Collier does a lot as well. He wants a feature from somebody else that has their own home studio. He's gone, here's my track, here's what I'm working on, send you the audio bounce. They record their stuff over it, send in the stems, he puts them into his project, and he's got the feature from someone, in Liverpool while he's in London, sort of thing. And his albums are riddled with features. So I think it's just a logical step.
I think what's interesting is when you give those two examples, it's almost like a modern equivalent of how a composition would come through in the classical field. So it's that kind of style in terms of you have a composer, and the composer is the name that you remember, but to be able to perform their music, you require a series of capable musicians that are replicating your work, so to speak. So it's almost like a throwback in some ways.
Well, I'm glad you brought up genres, because the next thing I was going to ask is, what genre do you think will benefit the most from this? Because off the top of my head, I can think that hip hop was probably doing this for years, right? Trading beats, trading tapes, and then sending verses back. So go ahead.
Can I ask one on that? Just because you've raised hip hop as a genre, what I'd be curious about is if you guys prefer. I guess the hip hop equivalent to me would be one rapper with one producer for a whole album, or potentially a rapper producer, a person who does it, like a Kanye, for instance, or like an old school Kanye, versus a rapper who enlists like a who's who of producers. What do you prefer in that instance? Because that's the hip hop equivalent to me.
Well, I'll give the layman's answer, and then Jack can give you the proper answer. I would say I prefer that sort of one producer, one hip hop. So
like a Run the Jewels, like an LP and
I was
Killer Mike.
Literally about to say that is like the ultimate, because like the reason why I would go for that is because their relationship. Like they develop a relationship, and the producer knows the kind of beats that the rapper wants. The rapper knows the kind of beats that the producer makes, and you create this like this nice thing. Whereas if
it's often sonically consistent as well when you've got that. that kind of you keep it all in house.
That's the point I was going to bring up, is that if you can end up with albums that are fantastic collections of songs, but to get that kind of that cohesive line from start to finish that doesn't kind of get lost somewhere in the middle, you need to have some kind of shared vision across it all. Because even having like it's like the albums where they've got, I know the Neptunes have done this before, where you've got like 2 or 3 songs with Neptune's beats and then other beats around them. Even though the other beats are around them, when you hear the Neptune song, you're like, it's like a bit of a homecoming, because you're like, I've heard this sound before. Whereas if you have that continuously, you don't have those kind of jarring moments where you're like, something was different before.
Yeah, it comes off as a compilation as opposed to like an album, like a piece.
A cohesive project.
Yeah. Well, so because that's interesting, because so obviously, Dennis, you're on that side, but then I would throw it back and say, why is that not the case for you when it comes to rock? Because I know you said the one-man band or the singular vision doesn't often work out for you. So what's the disconnect there when it works in the hip hop realm?
Okay, I'll give you another example of a different band. Something like Slipknot, right? Like when I go to listen to like a Slipknot song, I want to hear Joey Jordison play drums. I want to hear Jim Root play guitar. Not so much Mick Thompson, but I want to. I saw your face.
I thought you were going to say like I don't know the name, but I want to hear this guy smash that fucking cymbal.
The clown.
I will say I'm pretty sure Joey's left Slipknot now. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, but still,
Jordison.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Quite a long while ago.
Yeah,
I believe.
But like I want to hear these guys play together. I want to hear the music that they make together.
But that I wouldn't consider that to be the difference. The only thing is I'm not sure of what Slipknot's writing style is. But say for example, if what's the singer, Corey Taylor, right? If he is writing all their songs, and at least he's laying the groundwork. Like he might not have the technical ability of the actual guitarist, but if he's writing the main riffs or the chord progressions, and then the guitarist embellish, on top of that would still be to me a one man band / lead creative type project.
Okay, let's step back. Let's choose another band who I know how they write because I've watched too many documentaries on them. Rush.
Okay.
So Neil used to write the lyrics, and then they would all. I guess somebody.
I always find that so weird when the lead singer doesn't write lyrics. I know because Dream Theater is the same thing. I think like so, James Labrie doesn't write lyrics. But sorry to interrupt.
It comes very weird because Neil Peart is very insular and reads a lot of books, and if there's a couple of documentaries where. Geddy would literally complain, like he's putting these crazy words.
I don't know what he's saying. Yeah,
and I have to play bass and try and pronounce these like multi-syllabic.
Right. So these works of literature, like high tier literature fiction. That I've never read this book
by Tor and Snow Dog. Good luck, mate. So the way they write, Neil writes the lyrics, and then someone will come up with an idea. So
like a riff.
Someone will come up with a riff, and then they'll each put in their individual bits. Initially, they would, in the early albums, they would all do it together, but in the later albums, they should literally just do it remotely in their own individual, studios.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that I would that as opposed to let's come up with another band like say King Crimson, where you have one sort of showrunner. And he's telling, this is what I want the guitar to sound like, this is what I want the bass to sound like. I think that comes out being I love King Crimson. Red and Discipline are 2 of my favorite albums of all time. But at the same time, I don't think it's as creative as 2112 by Rush.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing I would say, putting into this context, is that when a collaboration works, it really works, and it's great to hear a melding of people's different visions. But I find that the process to get there must be harder and more long-winded. I find if you've got one creative vision and everything's going to be they're going to have the last say, I think it's going to be much easier to get a great piece of work if they're a great musician.
I think that's
this goes into the I guess the creation process when we're only getting the final product. But I guess I'm looking at it from the perspective of how I would like to write,
because that's part of the I think part of the reason that we've got so many people kind of trying to do it all now or do it in-house isn't just because it's available, but I also think because you don't have to compromise with other musicians, or you don't have to find other people that you work well with or have similar visions to or can write properly with, because if it's just you, it's just your decisions. But like to speak of Dream Theater, because they're quite a big band as well and they're all very gifted, they had to find each other and they had to then gel together, and then they even to recent times where they've had to replace their drummer, they still have those creative differences years and years down the line. If you're working by yourself.
I think that's the thing when you have the kind of equal collaboration side of things. It kind of feels like it does often get into things where it doesn't work, and then members of the band split off. So obviously, perfect example is like with Dream Theater with Mike Portnoy, where I felt like Mike Portnoy was trying to take them into like a heavier sound, I feel, and that kind of caused the rift, and obviously led to his individual leaving. I think from memory that's the kind of gist of it. But it's kind of like, it's almost like it's easier just to have a band where from the beginning, like say King Crimson, Robert Fripp, right? He's going to be the man. He has the last say, and he is going to hire the best musicians to fulfill that plan. It just seems like there's less room for trouble. If someone doesn't like it in a King Crimson scenario, tough, you've got to deal with it because it's Robert Fripp's band. It's
a bit like Megadeth and Metallica, isn't it? Where like Metallica is a collaborative band, and they've imploded once very famously. But then Megadeth is a one-man band essentially with very talented people around it. And they haven't had these massive blowouts, but they've gone through a cycle of members. Whenever he wants to kick someone out, you better believe it's happening because it's his band.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably the best way, because it's always going to reach a bubbling point. I mean, another example, Metallica was perfect, how you were saying. Another example is the Beatles, like infamously. The reason, they all wrote songs on each album that they released, but the kind of differences got to a breaking point. So I find it's very hard for a band to have longevity when you've not got someone that's the boss. There's gonna come to a point where you're gonna be pissed off and have animosity.
All right, let me put you both on the spot a little bit. Jack, how would you, if you had a project running, how would you prefer to run it? Would you prefer a collaborative project, or would you prefer to be the singular voice?
Are we talking like in an ideal situation?
Yes. Ideal, best case scenario.
Collaborative. Best case scenario, always better to have multiple influences and people bounce ideas off, people to kind of pitch in with stuff when you're got writer's block or anything like that. Yeah, best case scenario, collaborative. Always better.
So it's just easier to work with, and do you think the end product is of a higher quality than if you were to do it by yourself?
I think it is, and I think that one of the proofs of that is how many one person projects actually have one or two hidden inputs that are kind of just been there nudging it along from the background.
Yeah, like there was a mention. I was watching one of those Zoom parties for Song Machine season 1, and they were saying Damon Albarn was saying that there was one of the producers was just basically always there in almost every single, almost like the ghost third member of Gorillaz. I can't remember what his name was off the top of my head, but exactly as you were saying, I might try and find it in a little bit.
Yeah, I would have a slightly different opinion for myself. I agree with Jack that it is good and healthy to get like almost like a second opinion and get someone to present something to your idea that you would never have thought of. That's always like refreshing and exciting to have. But I kind of feel like in an ideal scenario for me, I would want my word to be final. There's something about the kind of something about the element of having to compromise, that kind of almost like the uncertainty, or the kind of like I can't put that out and say that I was 100% behind it. That kind of does trouble me to a certain extent. So I wouldn't want to have a project where I was solely responsible for the entire thing, but I would like to, almost like have the final say, and be deferred to in a certain realm. So it's almost like the midway point between the one man band and the full collaboration. It's somewhere in the middle.
Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised at Hadi?
Just based on how I am.
Yeah, basically.
This is why we've never released the Shordank album.
but look, the main thing I do want to stress is even though I think okay, it is going to be my vision when I do get that input and say for example with us, when you send something that something new based on an idea I've made, I've been like, I could have never thought of this. This is great. This is inspiring me further. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's not a negative. It's not a negative at all. It's just almost like having that final say is the important bit, to be like, I don't like that.
Do you think it depends on the group of people, that some people prefer to follow? Some people prefer to have somebody take the lead and they are following, whereas other people prefer to be in the driver's seat.
You're talking about bassists.
It's definitely going to be personality based. It's definitely going to be personality based. I mean, I could never be like a part of a band that's like a Nine Inch Nails, or any of the examples.
Yeah, I would hate that. Yeah.
Like if I had to like just do what Trent Reznor tells me to do, I'd be like, fuck this.
Yeah, you get sent a brief and you just have to fill that brief.
Exactly. Yeah. You're the underling. It wouldn't work for me. Me.
I feel like
unless the check was really good.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like you could do that as a job, but you'd have to have so many side projects that you were passionate about, or you'd just burn out of.
Exactly. It would feel like more like a job, more like a traditional job, as opposed to like a creative outlet. Yeah.
All right, we've been going for about 20 odd minutes or so. Any final thoughts on this topic?
Should we do a tally? See what side we've fallen on.
Oh, as in what? So in terms of this is what do we prefer listening to? Back to the original question.
Yeah. I'm going to stick with collaborative projects, just because I'm with Jack on this. I think the end result is more enjoyable.
So that would be your pick too, as well as a listener, Jack. Because I know the question was specifically as a creator,
and then come to me after.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking back when I asked you like which style do you prefer, and you said that sort of having that input of somebody else coming in. I think that's crucial. I think there's only so much you can do by yourself. Basically, it comes down to, I think,
tell that to Prince. Tell that to Prince.
Was he a famous slave driver, or?
I just played everything himself. Like,
oh, did he?
Yeah, he played everything, taught it to everyone else.
Prince had bands. But it was Prince, and he wrote everything.
Yeah,
they were his minions.
Thing is, though, if you're that level of musical genius, you can do that.
But that's what I'm saying. That comes back to my original point, where like the great one-man bands, they do have a level of musical genius that's almost like above most of the collaborative type bands.
That's why it's so good. It's like Michael Jackson, isn't it? Because Michael Jackson would go to Quincy Jones and sing and beatbox the entire song to Quincy, and he would like transcribe it and make it digital, and then get it to musicians, get them to record it, bring it back to Michael, and he'd sing his lyrics over the top of it. But it was all Michael did everything.
Yeah, no, that's insane.
I was going to ask about that. I don't know how Michael did his stuff, but I know he had literally world-class musicians in his band.
Mm.
Yeah, he literally went and like he was a really good beatboxer, so he'd go and beatbox and sing at the same time and do like all the bass lines and stuff first for Quincy, get him to listen to him, and he'd learn to play them. And then he'd do like the synth, and I want like this, and I want this synth coming in like this, and then like, sing it to him. And he'd do all the harmony parts individually and stuff. Yeah, it's mad.
Yeah, I think I think I'm gonna call it in the other direction to Dennis for sure. I'm gonna say I love, obviously I listen and love so much music, so I love collaborative bands, but I think potentially my favorites is that Singular Vision, and it's primarily because you're going to be looking at someone that has such a high level of musical intellect, and there is no compromise to what they're going to do. So I think I'm going to go with the one man band as my preferred. So that leaves Jack with the casting vote.
As always, it comes down to me to give you the correct answer, which is, in terms of enjoyment, it can swing either way. I think like obviously my favorite band, Protest, collaborative. I love Prince though, like all these single focused artists. I think that musically, like you said, Hadi, you have to give it to one man band type projects because of the scope that they've got and the lack of compromise in delivering their musical vision. I think that musically, that's got it. If you had to pick one or the other, like you're saying, go back to classical times as well. Like it's super difficult to become a musician that's well known enough. So you had to be top tier, and then that floor is kind of sunk over time as the access to technology and stuff has made it easier to kind of get noticed and get your sound out there. I think it's going to be incredibly restrictive and like tough for music as an art form, but as a like technical prowess exercise is one man all the way.
So lastly, I guess, could we have a quick brainstorm about what artists you'd recommend? We mentioned Prince. Would you recommend Nine Inch Nails as well? I haven't really heard much Nine Inch Nails, but I've heard it's a similar sort of thing.
I mean, they're not one man people. Sorry, we just looking for one man bands.
Yeah, with one man band specifically, with that kernel, with that core of a musical genius that works. So I know Trent Reznor is highly regarded as being a musical genius. So that's why Nine Inch Nails came to mind. Obviously, King Crimson with Robert Fripp.
Yeah, they're not necessarily personally like a band that I would listen to much. It's just one that I came up with that was quite like a well-known like single vision. So
people highly rate. People put those albums.
I would say Prince is the best that we've mentioned.
Probably the best example. Yeah.
Yeah, he played everything. His music is actually incredible. He spanned genres, and just an incredible performer.
There you have it. Prince is the pinnacle of one-man bands.
Pretty much. I can't argue with that.
Final thoughts?
31-21.
Listen to both. There's greatness with all options. The sound and the requirements deviate, but there's no right answer, to be honest.
All right. Right, let's bring this episode to a close. Thanks for listening. Next week we will be doing a tier list of Outkast's albums. Cannot wait for that. And look out for us on Twitch. Look out for us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts.
Twitter, SoundCloud, all of that.
All that good stuff. All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Peace.